One Piece chapter 1044. What a banger chapter that was. Let's talk about it. Honestly, I'm just gonna give you guys my thoughts. This video is gonna be unedited. It's just gonna be my raw thoughts. I've already had a couple of days to sit on the chapter, think about what I was going to say, and honestly, it's been weeks since I've been saying I'm going to do a One Piece YouTube channel. And after this week, it's like, man, if I don't do it now, I'm not gonna do it ever. So let's talk about it. Beginning of the chapter, right? We see Luffy. He doesn't know what's going on, right? He still thinks he just has the Gomu Gomu no Mi, and he wakes up, he's fine, he's refreshed, he feels as good as the beginning of the battle, if not even better. He doesn't know what's going on, and you see all of the observation hockey users immediately identifying like, yo, Luffy's awake, right? Even Sanji, which I think was a great touch, that Sanji, even while he was unconscious, his observation hockey is to the point where he feels Luffy come back to life, right? So I think that's incredible. But then we have the conversation with the five elders, right? And there's multiple things like in these page and a half that the five elders have to themselves, they gave us so much information dump that can be used for so many speculations, right? They talk about how the world government has been trying to get their hands on the Gomu Gomu no Mi for over 800 years, right? Since the Void Century. So since the previous Yoy Boy had it, because we assume he had it. But that it's as if the fruit has been evading them. And then they said, hey, that's not too crazy. Zoan fruits have a will of their own. And for me, this one line, not only is it massive because of the implications that it has, but I think people miss on the implications of that line, because obviously Oda wants to do more than this, than just this one thing I'm about to mention. But the fact that the devil fruits have a will of their own makes it so that destiny and Luffy's own freedom perfectly correlates with one another. Like they do not conflict at all, right? Because the devil fruit has a will of its own, it's definitely been searching for a user that's worthy of carrying Joy Boy's mantle. So a lot of people have been worried that, is Luffy everything that he is because he ate the devil fruit? And I think this answers that perfectly. It's like, no, I think we can very easily conclude that the devil fruit chose Luffy because of Luffy's ideal, because of Luffy's personality, because of his sense of freedom, because of his capabilities, right? So I think this is perfect. It does not diminishes Luffy's work in any way, shape, or form. And it also correlates the story of destiny, because chapter 1 says a Luffy story of destiny is about to begin, right? So from the very beginning, this series has always been very heavily on the topic of chosen one, prophecy, destiny, crossroads of fates, right? People, I don't know why people have a problem with this when it comes to One Piece, because it's always been very heavily implied since the beginning of the story, but people do, because people think, oh, I like the idea of Luffy being an ordinary guy that just kind of made it. It's like, he's never been ordinary. He has Zoro in his crew, who maybe started off as an ordinary guy, but he was trained by the world's strongest swordsman. We know he will be the world's strongest swordsman. He has the world's best navigator, the world's best carpenter. He has Usopp, the son of one of the commanders in the crew of a Yonko. We need to remember that. He has Sanji, who's going to be the world's best cook. He has Chopper, who's going to be the world's best doctor, right? He has a former warlord of the sea. He has Nickel Robin, the only person who can read the poneglyphs, therefore find the One Piece in the entire world, right? He has Brook, who is literally a person that died and came back to life and has a lot of information from Rogers' days, right? Brook does have a lot of good insight that he will probably provide later on in the future. He was influenced by Red Hair Shanks. He was raised with the son of Goldie Roger. His grandfather is a hero of the Marines. His other brother is the second in command of the Revolutionary Army. His father is the leader of the Revolutionary Army. He was trained by the right hand of the Pirate King. I don't know who can look at Luffy and think, oh, he's an ordinary guy that's just kind of made it. And it's like, dude, if you didn't have a problem with any of these things before, you shouldn't have a problem with Luffy being the chosen one. Like, come on, what story have you been reading this whole time? If this didn't bother you, this shouldn't bother you just because they give it a fancier title, right? Either way, that was a little bit of a tangent. Um, so they mentioned that, right? And another problem that comes with this is why hasn't the world government gone after Luffy if they knew he had this fruit? And honestly, I think this is just one of those things that's either probably going to be explained, but I argue it doesn't need to. Like, we can already come with a couple of conclusions on our own that make sense. First of all, this devil fruit is limited by the user's capabilities in terms of imagination. So either maybe no one has had it, or maybe they've had it, but they haven't used it in the same way that Luffy does. And it's like, well, of course, maybe they might not use it the same way as Luffy does, but Luffy's screaming Gomu Gomu no with every attack, right? And it's the Gomu Gomu no. I mean, but we need to remember, I don't think anyone's going to the Five Elders. And from the looks of it, it seems like only they have the knowledge of it. I don't think the admirals do, or the fleet admiral, or anyone else so far. And I don't think anyone's going like, hey, Luffy beat Crocodile with a Gomu Gomu no Storm, right? Or Luffy beat Lucci with a Gomu Gomu no Jet Gatling, right? No one's going to the world government reporting the names of the attack to the Five Elders. And the Five Elders haven't been present in any of the cases that Luffy has been in combat. We can argue they've probably seen Marineford, but we don't know what they did. From the looks of it, they seem like people that are just kind of chill, minding their own thing. And honestly, it might not even be a common thing for devil fruits to be reported. Maybe the fact that they're a devil fruit user, yes, but which devil fruit? I mean, think about it. Luffy's been known by most of the enemies he's encountered up to this point, but most of them haven't known that he's a rubber man until they're fighting with him, right? So I don't think to us it seems obvious because they've been targeting Luffy for a long time, because we've been following the story for 25 years. But I don't think there's any implications in the story so far, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that it shows that wanted pirates devil fruits have been reported. It might be the case, it might not be, but it can be easily explained by that, the way that users have had it in previous attempts. Maybe they've had certain priorities. We don't know. Truthfully, we just don't know. But moving on to the next portion of the chapter, I think, that's when Luffy's true devil fruit was revealed, which is the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika. And I think this is perfect for Luffy, because the implications of this fruit, right, bringing smiles to people's faces, only being limited by your imagination, still being rubber. So I personally didn't like the idea. I did like the idea of other devil fruits, but I didn't like the idea of Luffy not being rubber. Why? Because rubber has been heavily associated with his character. And even though it could have been explained with something that could have had the same properties, I just don't like it. Because honestly, one of the most iconic lines in One Piece to me is when Luffy said, rubber always bounces back, right? You take that away from Luffy, and that moment is ruined for me. And a bunch of other different moments, right? So I'm glad that he does still have the properties of rubber, specifically rubber. That's what he is. He's still a rubber man, but he has basically extra things added onto him. And I think that's very, very, very good. And this is just one of those moments that as soon as it was revealed, it's like, oh my goodness, how didn't I notice this before? Like, I was such an idiot. It was in my face. Even Luffy straight up told Momonosuke, and when he first met him, he said, like, I wouldn't know. I'm not a Zoan type user. When Momonosuke asked how he can transform back, right? And think about it. There's not a single other, like, it's such a weird thing to say, because at the context of the scene, it doesn't seem out of place. But what other Devil Fruit user have we ever seen say something like that? Never. And then, like, we've had so many different implications. Luffy's durability, right? We've had so many things that have to do with the sun god. Going back to the Enel fight, it was a man thinking he was a god fighting against a god thinking he was a man, right? Luffy's always been associated with the sun in so many different points. Even his ship is 1,000 sunny. It's been so in our faces this entire time that the moment that Who's Who said it, even though most people knew that Luffy was probably going to be Nika in some way, shape, or form, I'm surprised that I personally never heard the theory of his devil fruit being the model Nika, because by this point our eyebrows should have been raised. But it's just I think Oda handled this masterfully, as he always does. So yeah, that was a really very good part of the chapter. Then moving on right to the whole scene with Hiyori, I think that scene was great. It was good. It was awesome. It was crammed into the middle of such a hype moment that for me, while I was reading the chapter, I didn't care that much. And I think most, if not everyone, shared the same sentiment. But I think it was necessary because we're reaching the climax, and Oda wants to take care of as many things as possible so that Luffy versus Kaido isn't interrupted, and that we can have just that incredible portion of the fight uninterrupted. Because I don't think Oda's going to keep interrupting the fight after maybe one or two more chapters, because that's usually how his storytelling goes, right? Usually the fight begins with a lot of interruptions, and then like that last stretch of the fight, it's usually uninterrupted or very rarely interrupted. And I definitely think we're 100% in the last stretch of the fight. And I think Oda's just getting as many things out of the way as possible so that we can enjoy Luffy versus Kaido. Because how fast Luffy versus Kaido go depends how long the arc will go. And Oda did say that this year he's looking forward to drawing the last page of Wano. So I think this year not only we end Wano, but we begin the next arc. That's what I personally believe. But that scene with Hiyori, it was great. It was awesome. I really love that panel of Kazuki Hiyori, of Hiyori saying like, "I am Kazuki Hiyori. Shut your mouth, you miserable wretch." I loved it. It was so empowering. It was so emotional. It was the climax of so many years of following the story of the Scabbards, Mononosuke, Hiyori, Oden. I really love it. In terms of how Orochi died, which he might not. It's One Piece, right? In terms of how he died, I didn't mind it. I liked the fact that it was at the hands of Kanjuro, but I think like it was too rushed. That scene, I feel like it was too rushed, and maybe that's why it didn't click with me enough. Not just because it was in the middle of Luffy, but it was too rushed. I didn't feel that much, right? Because did Kanjuro kill him because the order was to kill everything in the castle, like everyone? Or was it because even though Kanjuro does have loyalty to Orochi, maybe he did genuinely love the Scabbards? Because from what we can see, that was definitely true. And maybe this is his way of atonement. We don't know. It was very fast. It was very anticlimactic in a certain sense, apart from that one panel that was incredible. But it was good stuff. It's just, unfortunately, in the middle of stuff that's just 1,000 times bigger than that, right? And then we move forward to the next portion of the chapter, and everyone's like feeling this Conquer's Haki coming from the rooftop. And even though we've seen Conquer's Haki time and time again, and it's just the same thing, I think Oda always finds very creative ways to get us interested, because the way that Luffy's just laughing, having a good time, just enjoying himself, just casually, just oozing Conqueror's Haki throughout the entirety of Onigashima, I think that was very good. And the way that Luffy just, I love how Brago the Ace made a video the other day with two other YouTubers. I forgot their name. How one of them mentioned is the hand of God came through the roof and told Kaido, "Yo, roof piece isn't over." I just love that analogy. A lot of people are speculating that this whole wacky scene, I loved it. It was great. A lot of people are speculating that is this Luffy's Devil Fruit doing this, like the actual Two Eyes, the actual stars in the head, because they did say that it's only limited by the user's imagination, and it brings laughter and smiles. But I think this is just Oda tone shifting the scene in such a way. I don't think Luffy's Devil Fruit straight up alternates reality. I don't think that's what they mean by it being limited by the imagination. It doesn't seem like something Oda would do, and I really hope it's not something Oda would do. But I enjoyed it. Only One Piece can pull something like this off, right? Where it's like such an important, such a mass, literally pretty much the biggest moment in One Piece up to date, as far as narrative wise, as far as the main character's progression wise. And it's just slapstick humor. What other series could do that? Like, you can show this to a non-One Piece fan, someone who hasn't ever watched One Piece, and they won't be interested in the show, right? And contrary to, like, when Naruto transforms, you can show that to someone, they're like, "Oh, I want to watch Naruto." You can show Ichigo's Bankai to someone who hasn't watched Bleach, and they'll be like, "Oh, I want to watch Bleach." You show this to someone who hasn't watched One Piece, and they're like, "See, this is why I hate the show." But it's like, when you have context of the scene, when you know what's going on, it's so mind-blowing, and I think honestly, I genuinely think only Oda is the only author capable of pulling something like this off. It shows his craftsmanship in his writing. That exchange of blows, Luffy discovering his powers, Kaido throwing a blast breath, Luffy laughing on the floor, and then just going like ah, and then grabbing the floor and making it into rubber and bouncing back the blast breath. That was incredible, and I love the Gear 5 transformation. I think it's my favorite gear in terms of design. I think it's great. And I actually like that one line of Kaido, like how Kaido's apologizing for their fight getting interrupted and being glad that Luffy's getting back up. Usually, Luffy's opponents are so annoyed that rubber always bounces back, but not Kaido. Kaido's like, dude, thank you. Right? Kaido wants to be in Fight Club, and I think that was great. Overall, honestly, this chapter, I think it's a perfect 10 for me. This chapter is, as a lot of people have been saying for the past week, peak fiction. I think it's peak One Piece, right? This feels like classic One Piece. This feels like the One Piece that we've missed ever since the time skip. I've loved post time skip One Piece. Don't get me wrong, but I definitely feel like pre-time skip One Piece was more solid overall. Because post-time skip One Piece probably has some of the most memorable moments, but in terms of generally speaking, I think pre-time skip was more solid, and this felt like that. And yeah, honestly, this chapter was incredible, and I'm looking forward to covering weekly chapters with you guys. Hopefully, I'll be able to do weekly. We'll see how everything matches up with my schedules, and awesome. Hope you guys have a great week. Take care.